Welcome to the number 11 team in this deep dive power ranking series, talking about the Portland Trailblazers. The have I ever told you the definition of insanity Trailblazers. The team that always seems to do the same thing every single year, make little moves here and there and think it's good enough to let Damien Lillard carry absolutely the entire franchise, put everybody on his back, and lead his team to the promised land that inevitably fails in the Western Conference. And they're coming in at the 11th ranking. Last year, they finished the season 42-36 in the Western Conference, 10th in the 2020 power rankings. And going into the playoffs, I predicted a first-round exit against the Nuggets. I know a lot of the quote-unquote experts were saying, oh, this is going to be a really good series. I picked the Nuggets because of only one thing. I do trust in Damien Lillard. I trust that he's going to be Dame time. I trust in Mccollum that he's going to get you about 20 a night, and I trust the remainder of the Portland Trailblazers to let you down. No matter what Dame does, it's not going to be enough. And lo and behold, I was not surprised when the Nuggets won in 6, much to the chagrin of many experts that aren't as smart as I am who picked Portland. And there was a lot of hoopla going on. Oh, what's Damien Lillard going to do? Is he going to demand a trade? Is he going to ask out? And once again, like Portland always does, nothing really happens. They lost Carmelo Anthony, and while this loss isn't tremendous, he was a pretty decent player for them, gave him 13 points a night on 41% from the three-point line, 54% true shooting, and he's still a guaranteed bucket getter. And before he goes off to play for the evil Empire Lakers, can we all thank the Portland Trailblazers for being one of the few teams to give Carmelo a real chance on a roster? He was so close to getting Colin Kaepernick kicked out of the league before the Blazers gave him one last run, and Melo proved that he's able to put his superstar ego aside and provide some scoring off the bench for a competitive winning team. Derrick Jones Jr. is gone. He's going to try to make something of himself in Chicago. Good luck. Maybe he'll learn to shoot and play defense there. Enes Kanter is gone, and not having Enes Kanter and Carmelo Anthony on defense is going to be great for this team's second unit, but we're really going to miss Enes Kanter's touch around the rim and his rebound aggressiveness. That's going to be one major hole on the second unit. Zach Collins is gone. Seems like a good guy by all reports. He's a good teammate, great bench energy. I hope for nothing but the best for him in San Antonio. Maybe he can stay healthy for longer than one Geico commercial.
Geico.
But they did make some, small moves. They brought in Larry Nance Jr., Greg Brown III with their second-round pick, Cody Zeller, and Tony Snell, who is surprisingly still in the league. But let's talk about this point guard ranking where they're going to come in third. And, okay, so the roster is good for Portland. It's just not good enough. You have Damien Lillard, elite, top 10 player in the league right now, undoubtedly. Then you have CJ McCollum. He's really good. Yusuf Nurkic is good. Norman Powell is good. Robert Covington is a decent role player, and the bench is cheeks. And then when you start to talk about title contention, you go to Brooklyn, 3 first ballot Hall of Famers in their primes. The Lakers, like 7 future Hall of Famers that are getting older, but LeBron still gets up. AD is just hitting his prime, and Russ is just leaving his prime, but he's hungry for a championship. And then a ton of ring chasers are coming off the bench for them. Golden State, you have Steph, Clay, hopefully coming back. Dre, Wiseman, Kuminga, Moody, Iggy, Wiggins, just an elite balance of veteran players and young energy. Then you have the 2 teams in the finals, the Suns and the Bucks, and then the Nuggets with playoff Jamal coming back from that ACL injury, and the Blazers' talent level just doesn't compare outside of Damian Lillard. But for Damian Lillard, what more can anybody say about him? He is in the argument for top 3 point guard in the game in any position. If he had some sort of semblance of success in the playoffs, he'd probably be 1A to Steph Curry, if not higher, because Dame has been proven to be more clutch. He can shoot from 70 feet beyond the arc. He's an absolute assassin in the clutch. Whether it's shooting over Paul George to wave goodbye to the crowd, or to make like 7 threes in a row while the Nuggets are trying to close him out and he forces an overtime that they had no business being in. I think many people called his Game 5 against the Nuggets the, quote, greatest long distance clutch shooting game they've ever seen. I mean, it was ridiculous. And then, of course, he's got a good handle. He's a solid enough defender at the point guard position. He can blow past you. He can dunk over you. He can shoot the floater. He can pass the ball well. And maybe, just maybe, with the new head coach coming in, he won't be playing like 45 minutes a night. Jesus Christ. He was 7th in the league in minutes last year, carrying this damn Trailblazers franchise. And lastly, he is an incredible rapper. You love to see his game. Go watch it on Sway in the morning. Coming on to the backup point guard position, and they're really lacking a playmaker, ball handler for this second unit. Once Dame goes off the floor, the team's offense sputters. Last year, they had like Rodney Hood running backup ball handler, and that's just not what you want. That's not winning basketball. Simons is more of a shooter, and I expect CJ or Norman Powell to run the primary ball handler role for the 3 minutes and 7 seconds that Damian Lillard actually sits on the bench. As for Anthony Simons himself, he's really good shooting off the bench. He's a great young talent, but he's not a point guard. He's more of a 2. He's a really good three-point shooter, as you can see by his 42.6% from the three-point line last year, 59% true shooting. The dude was just elite. He's a pretty good passer as well. He's just not a great dribbler, and he doesn't read offenses. And while this backup point guard role is so needed on this team, I really hope that Chauncey Billups and the coaching staff can help Anthony work on his slashing. He had 0.8% of his shots at the rim and had less than one free throw a game. If Simon starts slashing as well as being an elite three-point shooter, it can open him up even more, open up his offense, and truly turn himself into an above-average player that will help this team more than just a guy who can stand around and shoot threes. He's an incredible athlete. It's never on display. Call it the Terry Stotts offense. Call it Anthony Simon's not fully developing yet, but there's a lot of talent yet to be tapped in this player. Moving on to the point guard 3 role, and there's no depth here. They have Quinn Cook and Dennis Smith Jr. on exhibition deals, so I'm expecting one of these guys to come in. We just don't know yet. If I had to guess, it'll be Quinn Cook because A, the Trailblazers clearly don't value backup ball handler duties, and B, Dennis Smith Jr. hasn't been able to hold down a single roster spot since he was drafted. Quinn Cook is a very good three-point shooter, and that's really about it. Kind of a poor man's Anthony Simons. They even have the same looking hair. But Quinn Cook has been bouncing around teams for a while, shot 42% from the three-point line last season, just not very good beyond that. Dennis Smith Jr. struggled to find footing in the league. He's always been a really raw athlete and a decent slasher, evidenced by his 6'2" and 3 stat line, but 33% from the three-point line isn't going to cut it. He hasn't found a roster spot to stay on, and I can't expect anything different from here. If Dennis Smith Jr. doesn't make it in Detroit, doesn't make it in New York, doesn't make it in Dallas, why would I expect him to make it out here in Portland? He's bounced around to 4 different teams in 4 years, and that's pretty fucking rough for a guy who was picked number 9 overall just a few years ago. Moving on to the wing positions, where they're going to come in 9th for the shooting guard, and I know CJ McCollum at 9th and Norman Powell at 10th looks a little funny. I get that. The 2-guard position is very deep in the NBA right now. CJ is among the ranks of PG-13, Jaylen Brown, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, while Norman Powell is closer to DeAndre Hunter, Mikal Bridges caliber players. As for CJ, the first 12 games of the 2021 season before he got hurt in Game 13, the dude was absolutely insane, out of his mind, balling out. He was giving you 27.5 points a game, had 2 10-plus assist games, was playing the best basketball of his career, and then he fractured his foot. And then he sat out for 2 months, and when he came back, he never really returned to form. But even on a bad day, CJ McCollum is a bucket getter. He's got a good handle. He can slash. He can shoot from mid. He can shoot from 3. He can assist a little bit. And his height makes him a little bit of a defensive liability. And he's not bad by any stretch. He's just such a redundant player alongside Damien Lillard. They essentially play the same game, and Damien Lillard does it way better. So Blazers fans have been really trying to find a trade package for CJ McCollum for the longest time, from trading for Miles Turner to Ben Simmons. CJ's been the centerpiece of every trade package known to man, and I think you can win with this CJ McCollum, Damien Lillard backcourt. I think they should have looked more at their awful coaching, their horrible benches, their lack of elite wing talent, rather than the 2 guys on their team who are getting you 28-7 and 23-4 while they still have a coach that doesn't run offensive sets anymore. In my opinion, CJ McCollum isn't the problem. He can be a solution to this team if they just make some smart moves. But this upcoming season is going to be really interesting for CJ. Are you going to get those career first 12 games of the 2021 season now that he's had a whole offseason to rest? Are you going to get more of the playoff CJ where he got beat out by fucking Austin Rivers and Facundo Campazzo? Moving on to the small forward ranking, where we have Norman Powell coming in at 10th. And I've been going over this Norman Powell for Gary Trent Jr. trade in my head for a while still. I know it's been a long time, and I'm still trying to rationalize it. The best I got is this. Norman Powell, when they made the trade, and right now, today, is a better player than Gary Trent Jr. He makes more plays that don't show up in the stat sheet, and he was really good for them in Toronto. Gary Trent Jr. was a better spot-up shooter and a younger player, 6 years younger than Powell, and the Blazers are trying to win now, as they should be, with Damien Lillard hitting his 30s. So they'll take a prime, pretty good player over a young, decent player with more potential. I'm just not sure that Norman Powell was the right move to push this team over the top. It filled that wing need for sure. They had, I think, Derrick Jones Jr. starting for a little while, but as soon as he came over here from Toronto, his stats dropped across the board. His points went down from 19.6 points a game to 17. His three-point percentage dropped from 44% to 36%. His true shooting dropped from 64.5% to 57.5%. His PER went down from 17.7 to 14.2. His win shares were cut in half from 3.2 to 1.5. His usage rate dropped 4%. Basically, across the board, Every single one of his stats went down as soon as the trade occurred. In Toronto, he was good for them, elite, a slasher, a solid defender all around despite being a little undersized, and a great contributor to the team alongside the other vets like Kyle Lowry, Fred VanVleet. On Toronto, he was just kind of another guy, a role player. Wasn't that guy who was going to come through for them in the playoffs and push them over the top to at least get them out of the first round. Jesus Christ. But a little bit like CJ McCollum, who knows what's going to happen this upcoming season. Maybe Norman returns to that Toronto stats that he was giving you. He's just hitting his prime at 28 years old, and this is going to be the best minutes he's going to offer you. Maybe that's enough, question mark. Moving on to the power forward position where they're going to come in at 24th with Robert Covington. And that's not a testament to Robert Covington not being a good player. That's just, we know who he is. He's the perfect 3-and-D guy and not much else. And it feels like he misses every single clutch shot that's needed by the Blazers, especially in round one. He's starting to get a little older. He's just a lot like, I don't know, Jay Crowder. If there's a guy who has a higher ceiling than Robert Covington, you want to start him. But Covington can be a serviceable, fifth option on a championship team. You just need 4 other players that are a lot better than him. He shot decently from the 3 last season at 38%. He is your prototypical wing size. He could be a 2, he could be a 3, he could be a 4. He could even play small ball 5. He has good wingspan. He's strong enough to bang in the post a little bit, fast enough to guard the perimeter a little bit. He does a little bit of everything, just not very well. And I didn't see this too often, but there were some small ball lineups where Robert Covington was playing the 5 for them. I think that could be a really interesting sort of modern small ball 5-out NBA roster that they could be playing. Depending on how creative Chauncey Billups gets with this rotation, that might be some interesting minutes you see of Robert Covington at the 5. Moving on to the center position where they're going to come in at 10th with Jusuf Nurkic. Jusuf, he's a really good tier 3 center. So you want to put Jokic and Embiid in tier 1, those MVP, carry the franchise type of guys. And then in tier 2, you've got Vucevic, Gobert, Karl Anthony Towns. Guys who are definitely worth a max deal, but they come with their share of flaws and weaknesses. Then in tier 3, you got Valanciunas, Bam Adebayo, DeAndre Ayton if he doesn't progress anymore. And then Jusuf Nurkic is right in this tier of good centers, but not great centers. As evidence is how badly he was exploited going up against Jokic with foul trouble and just not being good enough to defend the Joker in general. His foul totals was 4 fouls in game 1 and the Portland Trailblazers won. He fouled out of game 2, they lost. He fouled out of game 3, they lost. He had 3 fouls in game 4 and they won. He fouled out in game 5, they lost, and then he had 5 fouls in game 6 as they were closed out. So obviously when Jusuf Nurkic is on the court, the Trailblazers are a better team and he just has severe foul issues. Regardless, Nurkic is a good defender and a really wide body, a strong player. He's just not elite. He's not a rim protector. He's not going to get you 2 blocks a night. And ever since he snapped his leg in half, all of his stats have really regressed from that really good season he was having in 2018-2019. And at this point, I don't know what he can really bring to the team to push them over as well. Because when you're looking at the Portland Trailblazers, you go, yeah, we make the playoffs, that's cool and all. Do we have the talent? Do we have the pieces to make a championship run? And with Jusuf Nurkic, I'm just not sure. He was asked to be the defensive anchor when he isn't at that level, but he wasn't helped at all by the coaching that kind of left him out on an island. He had fouling issues his whole career. He gets overly emotional, and he doesn't stretch the floor. But I'm actually a fan of Jusuf Nurkic. He's a good player on a team-friendly deal. He was in the 90th percentile of defensive rating when he was on the court. He was 16th overall in the NBA on luck-adjusted defensive RPM, similar to players like Matisse Thybulle and Nerlens Noel. And then Chauncey Billups is talking about getting him more touches, getting him more post-up even. I guess that could be fun. There's been countless interviews and quotes of Jusuf Nurkic just shitting on Terry Stotts and the entire coaching staff and the way they treated him and how much he was against it. I guess maybe that could point to Chauncey Billups being a fresh start, and maybe we'll get a breakout season from Jusuf Nurkic. That would really work wonders for this team. Moving on to the backup center where they brought in Cody Zeller. He's a very fine, adequate backup center who started for the Charlotte Hornets. He's a good enough replacement for Enes Kanter. You look at his contract and he signed on the veterans minimum deal, so that's a good value. He's got good size and is a better defender than Enes Kanter while the stats don't reflect it. He has size alone that should offer more rim protection than Enes did in the backup unit. In theory, he's a very squishy defender, doesn't block, doesn't really use his arms or verticality at all. He's a slightly better passer than Enes Kanter, but like I mentioned in the offseason screen, you're really going to miss Enes Kanter's almost automatic conversion of layups and baby hook shots. He's just such nice touch, and he's an aggressive rebounder while Cody Zeller is not. At the center 3 position is Larry Nance Jr. He's not a center. Once again, just like the point guard, There's no depth after Nurkic and Zeller at the 5. Maybe the exhibition contracts they have of Patrick Patterson or Marquise Chris are going to come in, but right now we don't know which one. As for Larry Nance Jr., he's a fine player. I'm just not really sure what his fit is going to be. He's not one of those players that are going to put you over the top. He's just another Portland Trailblazer move where they get rid of a first-round pick for a kind of mediocre player. Larry Nance Jr. isn't going to touch the ball a lot. He doesn't spread the floor that well. He doesn't offer you a lot of playmaking. He's just a really good effort guy. He's like a utility player in baseball. He can offer you anything. Play from the 3, the 4, the 5. He can rebound. He can defend a little bit. He can rim protect. He can pass. He can ball handle. He can play make. He can shoot. He'll hustle after loose balls. He's just a little bit of everything. Jack of all trades, master of none. The most elite thing he's going to offer to this team is positional flexibility and leading the Blazers in steals. He was 4th in the NBA in steals at 1.7 last year. I just have a really tough time believing he's going to find his place in the lineup. He's not a good three-point shooter. Traditionally, he had a 33% career average, and then last year he shot 36%, the literal best year of his career. So what, you want to hope that that's going to happen again? He's undersized, so we don't know what he plays at 6'7". Is he a small forward? Is he a power forward? Is he a center? In the positionless NBA, who gives a damn? Moving on to the bench, where they're going to come in at 28th. Again, the bench just leaves you wanting. There's either a lack of young, developable talent or elite shooting. And of course, last year's bench defense was awful with Enes Kanter, an old Carmelo Anthony, Rodney Hood, Anthony Simons, and Derrick Jones Jr., who was had the worst offensive rating in all of the league. And the current bench ranking is really unimpressive. They have Nasir Little. Blazers fans and the whole team has been waiting for Nasir to have a breakout. He's definitely getting better. There's signs that he shoots better. He's more comfortable in the game. He's always been a good athlete, had great measurables, and is a solid finisher. He just never really had a chance under Terry Stott's offense. So hopefully Chauncey Billups gives him a run, runs some plays for him, lets him slash and play make a little bit instead of just being a three-point shooter. Despite the fact that he improved the 3, you'd like to see a little more from Nasir Little. I'm thinking the Damien Lillard, CJ McCollum, Norman Powell, Nasir Little, and Yusuf Nurkic 5 could be lethal. But this is going to be kind of a prove-it year for him. He's actually going to get minutes. He's actually going to play. What is Nasir Little going to be able to do? What does he bring to your franchise? They brought in Ben McLemore. He's a fine, inconsistent shooter. He's incredibly streaky for the Rockets and the Lakers, hence why he was cut from Houston and then let walk from LA for nothing when they are hungry for catch-and-shoot three-point snipers. He doesn't give you much defense. He's kind of, I guess, a poor man's Reggie Bullock. He can offer you catch-and-shoot threes and some defense, but not much else. And he's not even a great three-point shooter. He's just streaky. He had a career-high year of 41%, has a career low year of 32%, and even last year he was streaky. He hit 33% from Houston and 37% when he was on the LA Lakers. So you never know what you're going to get with Ben McLemore from night to night. Also here is Tony Snell. Tony Snell is still in the NBA. Breaking news. His stat line last year was hilarious. He gave the Hawks 5 points, 2 rebounds, 1 assist, and you go, oh, that's fine. I guess he didn't play too much. He played 21 minutes a game for 47 games last year. So his per 36 numbers are 9 points, 4 rebounds, and 2 assists. I guess the good thing is he hasn't missed a free throw in 3 years. Honestly, I don't think Tony Snell ever lives down that 0 points, 0 rebounds, 0 assists, 0 steals, 0 block game in 28 minutes that he had against the Jazz. CJ Ellaby is still here. He didn't bring much to the team last season. He had 30 games, played only 192 minutes total, offered you 2 points and 1 rebound, 20% from the 3. By all accounts, he looks like a nothing burger. He tries really hard in the court. He just has really poor shot selection, plays out of control. Don't expect much from him. Greg Brown is here, kind of similar as well. He's kind of hilarious to watch because he has a 90-inch vertical. He's an athletic freak, but he offers you nothing offensively and has very poor basketball IQ defensively. He'll be developing for a while and is probably going to throw flashes of Derrick Jones Jr.-esque athleticism. One of the scouts when I was watching the Texas game was that he's an elite prospect with no game. My blurb for him is another athletic freak from Texas who needs to develop. He's a high flyer who can dunk and get most of his points off offensive rebounds and clanging wide open threes. His stroke is ugly, that shot from the side of your head, full palm on the ball shot. Most of his issues stem from mental mistakes that can be corrected, like poor rotations on both sides of the court, low court awareness, taking charges and not looking for entry passes, charging the paint while not looking at the floor, getting blown by from less athletic defenders from poor positioning, bad footwork, bad help D, stepping out of bounds, just all those things that you need to correct. He still needs to fill out his frame. He has freakish hops, freakish athleticism, but just doesn't know what to do with it. He's like a baby deer on the court. He's a high energy, emotional player, and I have no questions about his passion for the game. It's going to take a few years for him to learn how to play the game of basketball and channel his skill set into winning plays. And like I mentioned, they have Quinn Cook and Dennis Smith Jr. on the exhibition deals. Also here is Marquise Chris and Patrick Patterson. Marquise Chris is a great athlete. He provides some nice rim protection and rim running potential. He broke his fibula, though, was basically out all of last season for Golden State. He's an undersized big at like 6'9". He's more of a short 5 or a poor shooting stretch 4, one of those tweener players that doesn't really have a role. But he was a really great energy guy for the Warriors when he was healthy. Also here is Patrick Patterson. He's old as fuck and can shoot the 3 to some extent. That's really it. So if I have to guess, Marquise Chris is going to make the other roster spot alongside Quinn Cook. But you never know with this Portland Trailblazers front office. They brought back Keljin Blevins, the GOAT, Blevins. And by all reports, he's brought in to make Damien Lillard happy because he's Dame's cousin. If that's true, I mean, that's an awful waste of a potential roster spot. But seeing how bad the front office is at recognizing talent, I'd rather have this and keep Damien Lillard in Portland than go out and get somebody who has the NBA ceiling of a water boy. I do love his stat line, though. 0.7 points per game, 0.6 rebounds per game, 0.2 assists per game, 25% field goal shooting and 25% three-point shooting, 0 free throws attempted. Just great. One of the sneaky good pickups that they did make is the undrafted signing of Trendon Watford, and I was really in on this kid's game. He was in my sleepers video. He's basically, to me, Jeff Green 2.0. My blurb for him is the kid likes to get dirty. He enjoys driving tough despite lacking good finishing moves, but he has a nice soft touch on his floater. He has a solid jump hook. His shot isn't great, but his form is good enough and it looks improvable. He's very inaccurate with passes and will throw them too strong at his teammates or with poor accuracy, but he plays good posty on bigger guys and despite not being very fast, is able to guard the perimeter with some success. His shooting isn't likely to get elite, but he can carve out a 3-and-D role guarding stretch 4s and small ball 5s, and he paired along great with Cam Thomas at LSU. Moving on to the front office where they're going to come in at 19th. This front office is just a mess. They always fail to make that right move, push the right buttons, do whatever it is to get the help that Damien Lillard needs. He did the hard work of getting that superstar generational talent in Dame. The rest of it should be fairly easy, but it never seems to go right, either in free agency or in the draft. I was looking back in the draft picks they made. So in 2012, they took Damien Lillard. 2013, they took CJ McCollum 10th. That obviously worked out. And then in 2014, they traded that pick away for Gerald Wallace back in 2011. Oopsie. In 2015, they drafted Rondé Hollis-Jefferson, who they immediately traded away for Mason Plumlee. And while Plumlee had one of his best years of his career for them, he left after one season. So 1 good year of Mason Plumlee or 4 years of team control plus for a young player. Oof. Then their first round pick in 2016, they owed to the Nuggets for Aaron Aflalo, who was there for 1 year and was fucking awful. Oopsie. With that pick that the Nuggets had, the Nuggets took Malik Beasley. That'll work. In 2017, finally, after reverse swindling the Nuggets for the first time in like 10 trades with that Mason Plumlee Yusuf Nurkic swap and stealing a first, they had in the draft pick 15, pick 20, pick 26. They packaged 15 and 20 to the Kings to take a number 10 overall pick, Zach Collins. They picked him over some players you may know, Donovan Mitchell, Bam Adebayo, John Collins, Jared Allen. Then at 26, they took Caleb Swanigan over guys like Kyle Kuzma, Derek White, Josh Hart. Just a fucking yikes. Then they got Anthony Simons and Gary Trent Jr. in 2018. Those are nice pickups. 2019, Nasir Little hasn't quite panned out yet. 2020, they traded Trevor Ariza, the 16th overall pick, and the 23rd overall pick for Robert Covington. And while that does seem like, oh yeah, that's an upgrade, Trevor Ariza for Robert Covington, they gave up guys who became Isaiah Stewart and Usman Garuba, Josh Christopher, or anybody else who went late in the first round of this draft. And then in 2022, they have a pick swap basically for the Bulls in the Markin and Nance trade. It's just been a long string of really bad draft picks. And now they go and they say, all right, Terry Stotts, we've had enough of you. Let's go hire a rookie head coach. And by all accounts, the players love Chauncey Billups. Detroit loves Chauncey Billups. Women don't love Chauncey Billups. But Chauncey says all the right things in the interviews. And he's saying, oh, they're actually going to play defense for the first time in forever. And everything sounds good, but you never know what happens with these first-time head coaches. Sometimes they're going to be great. Sometimes they're going to fall on their face. Sometimes they just need room to grow. You look at Ty Lue in his first stint in Cleveland, it was like, oh, yeah, he's good enough, I guess, but this is really LeBron's team. Then he goes to the LA Clippers, and you go, oh, yeah, he's a real head coach. So head coaches are always tough. First-time head coaches are even more difficult. Neil Olshey is still the GM of the Blazers. He's been here since 2012, and while I do love the consistency of the culture, keeping the GM and the head coaches around for a while, it hasn't been a great culture. They've had some awful drafts, as I've talked about, or non-drafts where they trade away all of their picks. They've had some awful free agencies. Most recently, the notorious 2016 Evan Turner, 4 years, $70 million. Alan Crabb, 4 years, $75 million. Myers Leonard, 4-year, $41 million. Festus Ezeli, 2 years, $16 million. And Mo Harkless, 4-year, $42 million contract free agency. And they've really failed to do anything besides drafting Damien Lillard and CJ McCollum. You could argue getting Nurkic from the Nuggets, which they swapped Mason Plumlee in a first for him. That was a win. But even then, the Nuggets have been swindling the Trailblazers for years in trades. So I don't know how to feel about this coaching culture other than I've just been perennially disappointed. Now, by all reports, the owner, Jody Allen, is a fine owner. They are keeping the team in Portland, and that's a good thing too here. Moving on to the season projections, where they're projected to win 44.5 wins next season, just barely over 500, 50-1 championship odds, and the season results are, a first or second round exit. It's the same as every year. The regular season are going to have their ups and downs. They're going to finish the season strong once they get healthy and Damien Lillard really locks in. They're going to be in the playoff hunt depending on what sort of midseason move they make, bringing in someone for 4 future firsts that's like a Kelly Olynyk caliber player. And then depending on how good the team is or how dominant Damien Lillard is, they'll either be out in the first round or catch fire and lose in the conference finals. And then the entire following offseason, it will be, ooh, does Damien Lillard want to get traded from Portland? Does Damien Lillard request a trade? Have I ever told you the definition of insanity? And that's going to be the Trailblazers coming in at 11th. Once again, Damien Lillard, irreplaceable, Hall of Fame caliber player. Are they ever going to put the right team around him, or is this going to be just another year of, man, the Blazers aren't good enough? Let me know what you think, what you agree with, what you disagree with, and I'll catch you in the next one where we unveil the top 10 teams of this deep dive series.